You're gonna kill me.
No, that wasn't recording.
It wasn't recording. Now it is. Technology.
It's fine. I'll just reintroduce myself again. Second draft. Is it going now?
It's going now.
Okay.
We are in the clear. Sir,
Okay.
introduce yourself.
What up, nerds? My name is Brendan O'Leary. I am the owner-operator of a business called Lantern Light Media, and it's a photo and video business. I'm self-employed, and I absolutely love being self-employed. It's really one of the best decisions I've ever made. I get to make my own hours. I'm my own boss, and I enjoy being able to choose the people that I work with. Like, I wouldn't have thought that would have been as amazing as it is, but it really is. And if work is something that occupies 70% of your life, and you're not surrounding yourself with people that inspire you or make you laugh or that you enjoy being around, then what the hell are you doing? So I absolutely love it. I've got a couple small business clients. I'm going to expand it into a couple more, hopefully in a couple months. And yeah, hopefully we'll take off from there and enter that bottom threshold of success, which will be delightful. I got a film degree, graduated from the University of Utah. The dream job is to write and direct films. And thank God I didn't finish my film this year because everything got canceled. If I'd gotten to Slamdance like how I wanted and they canceled it, they just announced there's going to be a Joshua Tree this year, I don't know how put together I would be right now. I think I would be, still hungover probably. But so, no, I'm like, this year has been pretty terrible for a lot of people, but at least on a very personal level, there's been a lot of growth, and just excited to see what my personal life has in store. The outer world, we won't even talk about the outer world right now. We're just going to put that in a box over here and pretend that doesn't exist. So that's me.
Wow, that was quite the introduction.
Well, I don't know. I guess I gave a little bio there. My bad.
No, I love it, dude. Okay, just a little bit of background. You and I know each other from the U.
It's true.
Both graduates. Woo!
You bet.
What year did you graduate?
2016. So 2016? I graduated in the fall semester. Yeah.
Dude, I graduated in the fall semester of 2017. My 3 years. This is your 4 years. So, dude.
Yeah, you got a lot to learn in this coming year of what it's like to be a post grad. So many life lessons.
Oh, fuck, dude.
Yeah, your back's gonna start hurting. Your spine's gonna start cracking 4 or 5 times a day, and most of them will be painless, but not all of them. Be careful.
Shit.
Yeah, I mean that's just how it happens, man. My body makes more noises now than I ever thought possible. I'm not even 30 yet.
Dude, here's the thing. So I've noticed that I've been waking myself up in the middle of the night by my snoring. And back in the day, I never used to snore. And so now that the fact I'm snoring, I'm like, okay, this is probably my body definitely.
The fact that you're snoring yourself awake is like you've snored yourself into insomnia, which is fucking hilarious. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just stress related too. Lately, I've been waking up at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, wide awake. That's not
good.
Well, wide awake. And that's not from snoring. That's just up from the dead,
That sounds terrifying.
Oh, it's not terrifying. It's just shitty.
Sorry to hear that, man.
No, I think it's stress related, man. I think
it's the outer world getting you down?
It's the outer world, yeah. Because here's the thing too. So I've been trying to wean off of social media before I go to bed.
Good idea. I'm also trying to do that.
I try to take a break from Facebook for a week, and only lasted a week. And then,
damn it, Zuck. Yeah.
But I mean, Twitter, especially with the latest news this past week,
yeah, I cannot blame you. You picked a bad week to go off social media. The fucking president might be dying. You picked a bad time to wean off. Jesus.
Well, I remember the night that he tested positive, like when the news broke, I was about to seriously put my phone down to sleep.
Oh,
and
that's so funny.
Twitter blew up, and then I mean, it's awful, but like all these memes started popping up, and I went down this rabbit hole.
That is hilarious. Of all the days to like stop social media, it's like, did you hear the president might be dying?
And it just like hooks you right back in, you know? Every hour I'm refreshing Twitter to get
it's
updates.
Almost planned.
Yeah. Who would have done such a thing?
The Matrix.
Motherfuckers. All right. So going back to your film, what got you into film? Like what movie introduced you to it, or what piece of literature? Or
so it's I've had a couple people ask me this, and I hope this isn't a super lame answer because this is the first time it's been recorded. So we'll see. But honestly, when I was a kid, you know, and they were promising us all a bunch of shit that never happens. Like, you're gonna have flying skateboards, you're gonna have like an amazing fucking like economy, the country's gonna be on like solar power, space energy, everything's gonna be fucking sick by the time you're 30. That didn't happen. But when I was younger, I remember fantasizing about a machine that would allow me to project whatever I was thinking of in my head onto a screen or onto into a computer for streaming or something. Because I had so many wild and fanciful dreams that, like, when I was younger, like 8, 9, 10, 11, I used to look forward to going to bed because I knew I would have an amazing lucid dream, and I would be quite content, you know, to go to bed at 9 and, you know, wake up at, you know, however early it was for school. And I couldn't wait to like share that somehow. And as I got older, I had a sinking suspicion that this machine would never be invented. And I thought, okay, well, you know, I have this urge to share and explore, you know, my imagination with the world in a more visual way. So I started writing a little bit, like novel writing, and realized I'm not any good at that. You know, with practice, I could be better, but kind of explored that, realized I suck, stopped, and then came a time to, you know, go to college. And when I was, you know, I just did my general eds first because I still had no idea, and it just occurred to me, it was like, well, you've always enjoyed, you know, this idea of telling stories, and this seems like the closest possible vehicle to do that. So it wasn't a specific movie or anything that inspired me. It was just having this desire to share my imagination, and it still feels like the most appropriate way to do that. So yeah, here we are.
I think it's interesting though that you bring up dreams, because I mean, for me especially, like you, I have like wild, crazy dreams, and there's some where, you know, the technology isn't there, like we're not there yet, but to think about that and to kind of bring that to life sci-fi wise, you know, the possibilities visually, like that's exciting.
And it is like, I like actually like a number of years ago, like they've done very rudimentary like tests on people that are dreaming, and have been able to create extremely vague images. They're just like blobs on a screen. They're complete. You cannot tell what it is, but they're starting to eke out the technological ability to describe somebody's dreams like digitally like that, virtually like that. Obviously, we've got like decades and decades to go before anything even remotely resembling like a concrete, understandable picture is, but it is on the way. And, you know, possibly within our lifetimes, we might see something like that, which will be great. You know, it'll be the death of writing and filmmaking everywhere, but it would be cool. Totally down for it. But I think the reason it got me was, I mean, on the subject of dreams, it's like dreams were the first stories that I was telling. But the problem was I was the only audience member. And because I could lucid dream, I was in control and I kind of could dictate what would happen. And I did have an end point in mind, and I was building these little story blocks. I mean, they're shitty stories because I was 7 years old, for fuck's sake, but they were still, you know, compelling to me because I was experiencing them. And it's weird to think about like that being the kernel that has kind of blossomed into like pursuing film and all this other stuff. And in a way, like, I think it's the perfect way to approach that, because I don't necessarily want complete control. The only thing that can make a story better than one mind writing it is having 3 or 4. I can't wait to collaborate with the team to pull something together. So I really got lucky on how it's unfolded.
Do you write your dreams down? Have you practiced doing that?
I used to a little bit, but it only started when I stopped having them as often. And it was, my fear of like, am I becoming less creative? Am I becoming less imaginative?
Am I old?
I've got to.
Am I old?
I mean, I know I got a TikTok because I'm terrified of being old and irrelevant. I haven't used it yet. I got plans for that. Maybe I'll tell you about it later. But in any case, I text or write down my dreams to other people just to share them so I remember them because I fade so fast.
Yeah.
But it's gotten to the point where, like, if I even have a nightmare, it's like, oh, thank God I had a dream. Because normally I just pass out and there's nothing.
Yeah.
But if I get a nightmare, it's like, that's some spicy imagination fuel right there. So I do these days.
Yeah, that's what I do too. It's usually to my stepmom and my sister, of all people.
Is she your nightmare therapist?
Yeah, and she's actually helped me kind of dictate, like what symbols in the dreams might mean or something, just depending on like what's going on in real life stuff. And I mean, recently, a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, but I had a really vivid dream, and there was a salamander climbing on my hand near the end. And I looked it up online, and like it had a lot of different meanings to it, but it was so detailed, and like I was looking at the salamander and it was looking at me like a reflection kind of a thing. But I almost killed the salamander because it was in the bathtub for too long in the water. And a lot of that, like, because I own a bearded dragon right now, and you could actually give them baths. Fun fact. Not a lot of people know that, but you could give them baths, help them shed. And like, I guess initially I thought I left him in the bath for too long or whatever in cold water because it's not supposed to be cold, but it turned to a salamander, and then I looked that up. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, I too had a very vivid dream, and it definitely also had this like horrible macabre twist because I've been doing a lot of protest stuff recently.
Yeah.
And if you're unfamiliar, there's a group called Utah Citizens Alarm, and they are basically right-wingers that are concerned that there will be some kind of like violence or destruction or loss of life as a result of a BLM protest. Most people of my persuasion are pretty convinced it's just thinly veiled, like we're afraid of black people kind of thing. But regardless, I had a dream about these guys, and they'll usually counter protest, and they're usually packing like guns and body armor and shit. And I had a dream about them a couple nights ago where they like lured everybody out to this like community ball game, and it was actually like an elaborate like trap or whatever. And I had to like fight my way out of it in a really like horrible nightmarish way, which I won't like explain because I want people to think I'm not psychotic. But it was, I rarely dream about the things happening in my day-to-day life. And that was a rare exception where just having a lot of anxiety about the kind of the state of the country. The whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing has also been like ruminating in the back of my mind as well, because that was 3 protesters like myself who were just shot. So it's become real, and I wonder how deeply that has affected the subconscious dreaming mind. Who knows?
What's going to the protest then? From my understanding, so when Bernie Sanders was running was it the primaries this year?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I followed you on Snapchat because you posted some of the most entertaining videos of you campaigning, and that's when I kind of realized that you were becoming an activist. And I don't know if you were like that before. Like, I know you were outspoken before, but like, I don't know if you were actually physically go out and.
Well, yeah, I would say that's definitely the first time I left the state to participate in politics. And it certainly felt like the first time I took it like really seriously. I phone banked for Bernie a little bit in 2016, but nothing major. I was more like donating online and that kind of thing. But yeah, definitely would go out to protests and stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself an activist. Probably, I think that's a fair way of putting it until until really this year. And I almost said last year, because this year is so much has happened this year.
Just like I think back in June is when Salt Lake saw that major protest.
It was actually May 30th. May 30th.
George Floyd.
So, June 1st, May 30th. So holy hell, this year. The season finale of 2020 just keeps getting fucking wild.
Did you join that protest? Was it your first?
I was there. Yeah, okay. I was there in two parts. So I was there for the drive around the police station, and it was like, okay, well, this is kind of what I expected. Left to do some work for one of my business clients, and then while I was there, I was like, oh, they flipped a cop car right when I left, and it was like,
fuck.
Huh. So then I went back and saw the Capitol Hill graffitied, and that was such a surreal moment. I never thought I would see Utah look that way. And a lot of, I'm going to resist the urge to be like, oh, you shouldn't destroy public property and all this. But it was, for me anyway, it was just like a nice reminder that people like were angry here, because we live in Utah. And for the average Utah experience, it's very white here. Black Americans account for less than 2% of the total Utah population here. So Utah does not necessarily have a pulse to, racial struggle really. So to see people like myself, people that are sort of politically aware, just have that anger boil over. It was like, oh, I'm not crazy. Other people care. People that aren't Black can care about Black issues or issues that face Black Americans.
Yeah.
So on one way, it was surreal. And given that most of the damage, was gone the next day, like I don't feel any need to condemn, the graffiti that happened. But it was gratifying from an activist perspective to see that.
Were you afraid at all going into it?
Oh, certainly. The first hour or so, I was at the protest. My car overheated because it was a car parade and it was hot, and I had the AC on, and I drive a 34-year-old car, so it was like I was afraid for my car that I'd fucked it up. And then went to the caravan around the police station, which was my camera, and it was kind of this more tame atmosphere that I was expecting. And when I came back, there was definitely some fear, because the same area that I was at earlier had, every police unit in the valley, it felt like, was downtown. You had West Valley. I swear to God, I saw a Kanab police car for some fucking reason near the library. We had West Jordan, West Valley, or South Jordan, West Valley. I saw police equipment that I didn't know existed. I knew we had SWAT vans. Just consuming enough news media, TV shows. Everybody, knows what a SWAT van looks like. But we actually have police Humvees as well. And I saw one of those with the, big fucking thing on it. And I didn't think they would use it, but it was still just really like, holy hell. Like, why do we have a Humvee with a fucking 50 caliber turret on it? It just was so weird. And there was a moment where National Guard was deployed, and they had the helicopter overhead, and there was like just an hour of uncertainty. Like, are they just going to hold the line? Are they going to try and clear this up? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
And eventually they did, start taking street by street and clearing people out. But about that time is when it was like 11 or so, and I decided to call it, and I was heading home. But the thing that scared me the most was I was on my way home, like walking towards my car, because I strategically parked it further away so nothing would happen to it. And I was on my way to the car, and helping the police enforce curfew were the Proud Boy types. Like, I don't want to say they were definitively Proud Boys, but they had, we all know what they look like. Yeah. And the police were letting them enforce curfew. They were basically unofficial deputies for the people. And that was so cerebral. It was a very informative moment on where how to even describe this, where the American baseline is, where like the police would view a vigilante, unofficial militia as like a helpful community citizen. Meanwhile, the protesters are the ones that need to be like compartmentalized and managed, with helicopters and everything. It just blew my fucking mind. So I'm really glad that I saw that, but at the same time, it was just sobering and sad to see that, that people actually armed with guns are allowed to enforce curfew. Who knows what protocol or, de-escalation tactics they're exercising? Probably none. Where, I could talk about that all day.
Yeah, I was at home on my couch, actually, just laying there scrolling through Facebook. Yeah. And I saw like a Facebook Live video of this guy, and it was like at, I think 2:00 maybe in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I just watched the whole protest from that night, like off my phone. And I started questioning, should I go out and do it? Because like, hell yeah, this is definitely a cause worth advocating for, And then COVID came back in the back of my mind when it hit me that not only is the US getting hit hard with COVID, but we're also protesting. And that's like the most American thing ever, is protesting in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's been going on still to this day. It's still going on when it's at its like peak. If because, a lot of scientists are saying we're still in the first wave.
Yeah, when our wave, by the way, is not one that went up and down. It's just one that plateaued and then is going up again. So we don't have a wave. We have a plateau that is now going up again. So fuck us, I guess. I think about that. Like, I mean, obviously every time I leave the house, but especially like for the first couple weeks when it was like, is this safe to be doing? Yeah. Like, are we just killing ourselves out here protesting? I did learn. They came out with a study that basically being outdoors is super low risk, and specifically they found that UV light essentially neutralizes the coronavirus within 6 seconds. So masking up and being outside ended up being like relatively safe. Actually, obviously, try to keep your distance and such. But before that came out, I do remember this anxiety of like, I need to do something, but of course, 2020 is the year where you want to hit the streets, but everyone might kill you and your family because, the coronavirus. So I'm just, thank God that it it's proven that it doesn't affect too much of people that are outside wearing masks. But yeah, I definitely remember feeling like this feels like a terrible, terrible idea. So thank God nothing happened.
Well, and I was watching the news of all things on Facebook Live, and I kind of like it more when they do Facebook Live stuff because it's unfiltered. Like, it's just there in the moment, right? And knowing if I watched it on TV, they'd cut back and forth between the anchors and try to get speculation and, all that stuff, and cut away from people actually being angry.
Yes. Which is what we,
Yeah. But I don't know. Like, I kind of regret not doing it then, but like also seeing the guy with the bow and arrow, and seeing that kind of escalate. And like you said, seeing Kyle, whatever the fuck his face is,
Rittenhouse, the
douchebag, seeing that and seeing how people are donating money to his cause. Like, what in the fuck? Why?
Yeah, we live in a very sick nation, and I think what's been hardest for people to accept is that it hasn't just been like this the last 4 years. Like the frustrations that are boiling over. I mean, I was too young to remember the LA race riots, but this is not unlike that situation. Police brutality escalating out of control and people having enough of it. Ferguson, which I believe was 2015 or 2016, was maybe possibly 2017. So much shit has happened, I can't keep track of it all. But yeah, very similar situation. And I mean, people are economically depressed.
2014.
Thank you. People are economically depressed. As like the lack of a comprehensive healthcare system in light of a pandemic is also starting to open up a lot of people's eyes, and people are fed up with basically having their solutions proving to be inadequate. People are told to go vote. People are being told to participate. People are told to make calls and be active in local government. And now we have a situation where we have been voting and it hasn't been creating the solutions that we want. There have been a lot of people in the United States that are apolitical and apathetic that don't vote. But as this year goes on, like I understand that mentality more and more. Obviously, I'm still very politically active and I still vote and everything. But when time and time again, the people that you vote for fail to secure the changes that they said they were going to, like, I think apathy is the only expected response. We've had a number of protesters here in Utah. I'm sure you're aware of this. Who are now facing like life in prison charges for buying paint for a protest, which is absurd. But that's a Democratic district attorney that did that. And, I'm, obviously a Bernie supporter, so I'm not necessarily a huge fan of mainstream Democrats, but like, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like these frustrations are so widespread and there doesn't seem to be a correct way forward. Like most people voting for Joe Biden, I think it's like 61%. It's because they just don't like Trump. And what a low bar that is, right? Because Trump is horrible and terrible and stupid and racist and all these horrible things. And if the best you can be is not him, that is such a low bar.
I agree.
I can only hope that the next election cycle, if we have one, will have some candidates that really can tackle these systemic issues head on.
How do you think experiencing like all these protests and being so active, how do you think that's going to kind of influence your writing going forward and your story ideas?
It almost has already, because throughout the course of this year, my goal was to at least finish the first draft or the first act of the 14th draft of this damn script I've been writing. And the script was supposed to be about Utah, and kind of digging at the side of Utah that I think a lot of people would prefer not to see. We've got BYU TV here, and we've got a big Disney fan base. We've got a couple like shows like Yellowstone and stuff that roll in that are not really about Utah, right? But they take place here, and some of our culture is exposed that way. But for the most part, I think there is a very objective idea of Utah that does not exist in the media sphere that I wanted to create. And protesting and all these things happening, like it seemed like it would make sense to start to include some of these things. And now I'm just kind of at the point of how do I do that, and how do I keep the story about characters as opposed to me kind of injecting what I believe in my personal political beliefs. And that's a fine line to walk. I thought about including masks in my film, because that might date my film, but at the same time, it feels very emblematic of Utah right now, where we've got Salt Lake that is furious at Utah County because down there they don't wear masks and up here they do, and they're just butting heads constantly, and the conversation just seems like it's endlessly going back and forth. And I feel like I desperately want to explore that in my writing, because like, will people even believe that this is what it was like 5 years from now, like 10 years from now? Like, will people remember how ridiculous it was? Like that we've got billboards that are like, we've got one billboard that says, wear your mask for your family. And then the next billboard is like, Cosmopolitan magazine contains porn and it hurts kids. And it's like, and then the next billboard is like, meet your LDS millionaire husband. Like
Utah in a nutshell.
Yes. Like people need to know. So I don't know if I will, but I certainly want to. I certainly want to explore what Utah is like now, but mostly still keeping what it has been for me growing up, which is, I think, it's just more in my brain. I've been living with it my whole life. So yes and no on that one.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the culture kind of, because on Twitter, actually a couple of days ago, some film journalist critics I follow on there retweeted a video of General Conference. I don't know if it was from this year or years ago, but it was somebody talking about coffee and
I
caffeine.
also saw it. Yes.
And
Maybe you should explain it for the audience. Yeah.
Well, she's just talking about how it's bad for you, and what it's just really. I mean, it paints the image of Utah that people not from Utah understand, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what these people are aiming from it. And I almost defended it, being like, okay, look, like her. I'm like, I almost said, like, you know, that's her, but like doesn't mean she's a bad person, because they were treating it like they're a bad person or crazy, right?
Yeah.
But having grown up here and not being part of the LDS culture at all, but you kind of come to an understanding that they're still people, and they have definitely have a heart, you know, like they're a lot more often than not, their heart is in the right place, right? Despite some religious viewpoints, which is all it comes down to, is religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing these people kind of paint a weird image of Utah just from this video, and I'm like, that's not how it is. I mean, like, I get the frustration, but like, that's not how it is.
Yes. The way I would describe it is like, that is Utah, but it is not all of Utah, right? That is definitely, irrevocably, unfortunately, a component of Utah, but Utah is this much bigger thing.
Yeah.
And there's much more nuance to be had there. So I sympathize with that. It is I mean, Utah really is a wild place. Like, at least, you know, culturally speaking, it blows my mind how like wild and different it is at times. And, you know, full disclosure, like, obviously I am not LDS.
Right.
And my only real like difficulty with the LDS religion comes in when the LDS church institution starts to get involved. I mean, I don't necessarily need to talk to you too much about it, but for those that don't know, we had a film professor that was a very terrible person to some very young victims, and the church was aware of this, and they continued to give him money for films for almost, you know, decade and a half afterwards. Yep. And it's just so painful for me that isn't painful for other people, you know. And like we talk about, you know, we kind of laugh and roll our eyes at this woman like crying about how coffee is going to send you into outer darkness and all this other stuff. Which I honestly, it's like, God bless her, you know. I'm not even too mad about it. But it's, I almost have no issue with that, because that doesn't necessarily really affect anybody else except the individual living that life experience. But it's when it starts to affect other people that I hate. Like, I wish they had the same outrage for coffee drinking as they did for, you know, every homeless person that is forced to live out on the street in the wintertime, or, you know, all the money that they could be putting towards, you know, food kitchens or public services that they instead, you know, build malls with and invest in Victoria's Secret stock. It's just, I don't know. It just depresses me a little bit, you know.
The average are in different areas.
Mm-hmm. But the average like Mormon person, I mean, for the most part, like, we have probably more in common than we don't, you know. It's just, I mean, and this kind of negative influence, this top-down influence, is common in a lot of things politically, job-wise. Like, it makes sense that there would be a similar, you know, kind of a toxic power struggle from the top down would exist in religion too. So for the record, I don't have an issue with LDS people, but the institution itself, I certainly have many reservations with.
Well, like, it's, I kind of wanted to explain to the person who posted it, say, like, that's a whole different county, probably, you know?
Yeah.
If you live in it's interesting, because like Salt Lake is very much more liberal, if you will, than Davis County or Utah County, which is like the polar opposites of Salt Lake.
Yeah, the south of the mountain really is like a light switch goes on or off, depending on your perspective.
But I mean, it makes sense too, because like we were talking about the masks, all the anti-mask stuff is going down south of Salt Lake, you know, and so it's interesting to see what people think about Utah as a whole when it goes so much more, you know, because
I'm almost afraid to ask whenever I'm traveling. And like I mentioned, I'm from Utah. Like, when I was younger, actually, it was more common. Now that I have like a beard, I think people just assume. But before I had a beard, like when we'd say we were from Utah, there would be always this like, oh, like reaction. And it was so weird. It was so weird. It was like, because at that time, like, you know, I had no like real framework for why they would, you know, react that way. Now I do, but even now it's like, I mean, I don't know if that reaction's still warranted, even though I kind of like know now. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird being a Utah abroad sometimes.
Oh, I'm sure. But I mean, granted, it's because Utah does live in its own little bubble. You know, I have friends that live in California and elsewhere, and seeing how they live, like just even with like marijuana, for example, right? They'll post photos willy-nilly on Facebook and whatever, and like their neighbors are growing it. Whereas in you wouldn't see that at all. Like it's such a weird, weird paradox almost, you know. Paradigm?
And it's paradox. I would like to think that it's not such what's the word, irreconcilable gap as like it has been kind of built up to be. You know, like it is certainly like, I mean, even like Nevada and Colorado, right, which both have legal weed on either side of us. You know, I know lots of people that have little road trips to visit the dispensaries. And I mean, when I'm out protesting, or if I'm out just to downtown, if I'm out hanging out with friends, like I'll occasionally just smell some, right? Like it is definitely becoming more socially acceptable. But I've kind of fallen out of my regular, like more LDS leaning friends. So I would very much be curious, like where their reservations officially lie, because I want to approach them with an offer. I want to be like, listen, I won't tell God about that Dr. Pepper that you had with caffeine in it if you can help me get, you know, a dispensary on like 300 South, you know, at State Street. Like let's work it out, a deal here where we can both get a little sinning in, you know. See how that works out.
Yeah, I don't. Do you think Utah will legalize marijuana?
Well, we almost did, but then we were stymied by the legislature. I don't know.
Yeah, that was fucking bullshit.
Yes, it was. Yeah, for the people that don't understand, I believe it was 2016, but there was besides the election for candidates to fill governor, or we didn't have a governor's election that year, but you know, your senators, your national elections for president, that kind of thing. On that ballot was also
2018.
2018, thank you. It's ballot initiatives, which are basically items that the public, there's no candidate, it's just an issue that the public votes on. And there were 4. I remember we had independent redistricting commission. So that was basically an attempt to mitigate gerrymandering in the state. And gerrymandering is the practice of cutting voting districts to favor one political party or another. I think it was Prop 2, which would legalize medicinal cannabis in Utah. And then there was a gas tax, and there was a sneaky 4th one that sounded reasonable on paper, but that basically ruined all of the other ones. And the last one basically would allow Utah Congress, to call itself into session for disasters or for emergencies. And for the average person reading this, like on the ballot, it's like, oh, well, you know, okay, that sounds reasonable. I want, you know, my government to take swift action if things are going bad or things are reckless. And so people voted for that, and that passed. And what that allowed them to do was Prop 2 passed, and Utah Congress does not like medical marijuana, but the ballot passed. It cleared the threshold. It got on the ballot and it was approved. They used that last one to call themselves into session to immediately neuter it, like in front of everyone. And it was just like, So culturally, we are winning this fight. Like culturally, marijuana is like, okay, well, nobody's dying from it. It smells bad, but I guess it's fine. And I know a number of people who are LDS that are, you know, that very practicing. They're not Jack Mormons or anything, but are using it to manage pain and things like that. So it has officially worked its way in some capacity into the more conservative LDS sphere. So we're winning that front. The difficulty now is the people that have, we'll even say, a legitimate medical need for it are just such a minority. And the people that want to use it recreationally, that number is growing. But the the demographic that is vocal about it is not the one that's in power. So Republican leaning voters and specifically LDS voters, like I imagine they're like okay with it, like, you know, yes or no. They don't necessarily have an opinion, but they're not the ones clamoring for their legislatures to get on board with it. You know,
Yeah.
it's everybody else, and they don't have the political power. So we'll get there eventually, I think. You know, maybe in the third year of the 2034 resource wars, you know, we'll have legal weed in Utah. We'll see.
Shit, dude. I don't know. You know, it might also depend too on, I mean, election stuff with presidents and all that.
Yeah, I almost don't even have a life plan until after November 3rd. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to see what happens. Like, I don't want to make like, I know people that are buying houses and, you know, things like that. And it's like, should I buy a house? Should I not buy a house? Should I, what does, like, when people ask you, like, where you see yourself in like 5 years? It's like, I might be in like a weird fascist gulag somewhere. Like, you know, because somebody finds this conversation online and he's like, he's an agitator. We got to take care of that one. So who the fuck knows? I don't know what 21 is going to look like. Is it going to be worse? Could it possibly be worse? I think so. I'm not going to say it won't be. I don't even want to talk to people about it because people are so ready for 2020 to be over that the idea that 21 could be worse, it's like, if you just cannot broach that. Like, people like need 2020 to be over and done with, like almost as bad as they like need like October 31st to be like a radical Halloween, because people are like very nervous that COVID is going to take Halloween as well, which probably going to. But anyway.
Yeah, well, and like Halloween's like a full moon this year. It's like all the
And it's like, do we want to be outside during all of this? Like, the last time we had a full moon, the president got COVID. So I don't know. Maybe I'm staying inside this Halloween.
Maybe that's when the steroids take their toll and he becomes a fucking werewolf.
Who the fuck knows? I would believe anything at this point. Like, who the fuck knows?
Dude.
I really, oh man, I might be too drunk on Halloween to even go outside. I'll be so nervous about like election stuff. I might just be in a stupor. Who knows?
So well, I'm with you with the election. I'm actually requesting the 4th off because
Very nice.
It's going to be a hangover day of celebration or sadness. Like,
Yes.
it's either or, right? I mean, it's especially because this last debate, I couldn't watch it all the way.
Oh, I have
Without
too much
drinking.
self-respect for myself to put myself through that. I knew what it was going to be like.
Yeah, well, I drank a little bit too much, and then I had to work. It was
Sorry, sir.
If that's how that's going to go down, especially on the night of the election, I can only imagine what a shit show is going to be, right? So
yeah, and you know, I'll bet, you know, you mentioned my Bernie advocacy a little bit earlier. Like, for me, it's like I'll either be sad or really sad, like depending on how it unfolds. And you know, I do hope that people that, you know, enthusiastically are voting for Biden recognize that we'll have to protest him quite a bit as well if we want any, you know, real change. And that's another conversation. It's like, I know Trump is bad, but we're gonna, like, this fight isn't over November 3rd. Like, we're gonna have to welcome to the new normal. Like, we're gonna be in the streets fucking constantly if we want any kind of change at all. Because I mean, the snippets of that debate I have seen online, I mean, Joe, they're both competing to see who loves the police more. Like, they can't read the room at all. Like, if they looked out the window, they might see that people are not happy with the police or the law enforcement issue we have in this country, and the fact that Joe is still, he's Crime Bill Joe to this day still. So it's just like, people, like, the fight is not over November 3rd, no matter who wins. Like, the fight will be much harder and scarier if the outright fascist wins, but the work has to continue. So I hope people recognize that.
Yeah, I want to run a theory by you, but we'll
go ahead.
I want to run a theory by you, but we'll do it after
when the cameras aren't recording.
Yeah,
because it's a fire theory.
Yeah, because no, I'm with you, and like, I am one of those who are voting for Biden just because, like, you know,
which I totally understand and respect.
But like, I have a theory, and it goes back to before COVID hit, and really, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear about it.
It's nothing conspiracy, like, you know, relating to the virus. It's more with the DNC and the same thing, the same shit they fucking pulled in 2016.
I mean, I think I already agree with it based on what you just told me. So I mean, just I've got this right here.
I know, dude.
I've got my political theory books. Like, I feel like I'm already in agreement with whatever this
I know. Dude, here's the thing too. So in 2016, going back to like that election year, there were three things that happened that year with the candidates, right?
Mm-hmm.
An eagle attacked Trump in the White House.
Just fucking awesome, by the way.
Hillary Clinton was so bugged by a fly on stage. She's like, you know, and it came out of that funny meme. And then Bernie Sanders had a bird land on his podium, and everybody went silent. And like, that to me gave me so much hope. Like, just like the symbol of that,
that was seriously one of the most optimistic moments I think in like political history.
Yeah,
was Bernie Sanders alighting on that podium. And I mean, a lot of people were starting to look into that meaning, right? The eagle attacking Trump is a pretty hilarious metaphor for, exactly. But yeah, that little bird moment was so random and unplanned, and also just, I mean, for the people that already liked Bernie, it just validated a lot of the reasons why, as like a gentle person that gives a damn. And then for everybody else, like, it was just like an insane moment that went viral because it was so organic, it couldn't possibly be engineered. And it was a very optimistic, and obviously, I mean, the millennial fan base is like, fucking bird, that's sick. Like, I mean, we're easy to please sometimes. And that was certainly one of those instances. So yeah, that 2016, we hardly knew ye. Oof.
Fuck.
Yeah, we didn't get any birdie moments this year, unfortunately.
No, we did not. We got a lot of fucking.
No, we had Bernie having a heart attack instead. This year sucks ass. I cannot believe that happened. Poor guy.
I know. Fuck. Okay, let's tie this back to being an artist.
Okay.
So with tying into like all the political stuff to your writings, like that script you were mentioning, I think I've read a couple drafts of that. Is that the same one?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fun. But I going off that, like, would you consider possibly making that into like even like a documentary almost? Would you consider doing a documentary with all of your activism?
Well, the kind of documentary work I have wanted to do is actually more stemmed from my journalistic work that I was doing 2 years ago at the TV station.
Wait, go into detail with that.
Yeah, I worked at PCTV for a couple of years right after I graduated. And honestly, it was like one of the best things that ever happened, because I graduated. I had no practical experience with a camera whatsoever. And it was all like, I took mostly theory and writing classes anyway. So I was completely useless to the business sphere, and nobody wanted to give me any money for anything. And I dropped my girlfriend off of the time at the track stations because she was still in school. And UTA was having like a career day where it was like, become a bus driver, get this much hourly and this many benefits. And it was like, well, I guess this is a fucking sign I can't get any work, so I guess I'll drive a bus. And so I did their little interview thing. They said, okay, we'll call you back in a couple of days, but we're sure you're gonna get this. And it was like, okay. So I spent that couple of days like frantically donating or submitting my resume to film production companies. And then PCTV called me back the day before I was supposed to go in and like confirm and get my CDL training for the bus. So it was like they kind of saved me from that. And we didn't necessarily part on the best of terms, me and this TV station, but I still learned a lot about how to handle cameras. And I learned that I'm actually very interested in journalism, if it's a specific kind of journalism. And I still want to pursue kind of more in-depth documentary work as a result of that. The one that's been in my mind, it hasn't been Utah specific. And I feel like on one hand, I would like to be involved with a documentary about Utah, but I still don't know if I'm the authority to speak. I feel like, I don't know. Anyway, but the documentary work that I've been trying to accomplish for a number of years is in the Middle East. I've been trying to figure out a way to get in Yemen and just explore what daily life is there, because not a lot of people know that we are involved in a blockade of Yemen. People don't know why. There's a cholera outbreak there. People don't know that Saudi Arabia has been, subjugating these people for a really long time. And I kind of get frustrated that these Western media outlets really only focus on kind of Western things. Like, I remember it was a tragedy, but the Paris knife attacks, do you remember those? It was like maybe you'll look it up again. You can tell me before I give out an incorrect date. But it was a very tragic day. And there's outpouring of support from all these countries, all these Western countries. And meanwhile, tragedies of equal or greater value are happening all the time. But because they're not in the sort of white European sphere, they just go completely ignored. So I felt like as a journalist, I had some kind of responsibility to try and crack away or chip away, I should say, at the sort of accidental, maybe a subconscious blackout of issues that affect people all over the world. So I'm definitely interested in documentary work in Utah. I don't know how I'd approach it. I might be too cynical and jaded to do a documentary about Utah. If I make a narrative, I can, have fun with it and my characters can be silly and whimsical. But if I do a documentary, I might just be a cantankerous asshole about it. And I don't know if anybody will watch it. And I don't know if Utahns will like it. And I don't know if people watching it will give a damn. I don't know if I'm the right voice to do a Utah documentary.
You'll be the Michael Moore of Utah.
Which, I'd take that. He's got some success. So I'd take that. I wouldn't complain about it either.
I've thought about doing some documentaries. Maybe. Possibly, but that's more personal, like family stuff, it wouldn't, I don't know, because for me, like when I'm writing and stuff, I don't usually put like a lot of political issues into my writing or just, I don't know, like just issues as a whole, unless they get brought up in the script. But like for me, that's never my intent, like I know there's a lot of filmmakers and writers who purposely try to include as much as they can and be actively aware and spread the word, but that's just not my style.
Well, on that note, when you talked about incorporating this political stuff into my films, I'm actually attempting to do that in a way that is not so obvious or on the nose. I think it's possible to have political films that do not mention politics at all.
I believe that too. Subtext, dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing I'm trying to do with my characters is I've identified in my mind one of the core illnesses of the United States is this sort of obsession with individualism, almost at any cost. And, as an individual, I like being an individual, right? I appreciate the unique identity that I have. But what I would attempt to do with this film is to sort of inject into the media consciousness this idea that we are, as much as we are individuals, we rely on people, and it's nothing to be ashamed of to rely on somebody else for help. This sort of bootstrap yourself into success mentality that a lot of people have, I think is soul crushing. And for millennials especially, we've got these influencers that kind of emerge out of nowhere and become massively successful. And they, in turn, kind of sell an image of success to people that maybe didn't have any kind of vision like that before. And now they have this idea that, they have to be kind of exceptional to get success. And, I think that's a very damaging thing. So for my films, I'm just, I think the political statement would be it's okay to rely on other people, and it's okay to literally require a support network to achieve whatever you're trying to achieve, and kind of dissuade the notion that only people that are super driven and super ambitious and have the strength to do all this on their own deserve success. So in that way, my films are becoming political and hopefully more effective.
Yeah, no, I get that. Do you think having the social media presence though Like, do you think you have to portray yourself as a certain way so people don't?
Unfortunately, I think so. And I think, I mean, there's some great movies coming out. Like, I was literally on a phone call before this call where somebody was talking about the documentary about social media that came out very recently.
Social Dilemma.
Thank you.
Yep.
Which kind of explores a little bit of the dangers of these social media apps and how they affect us without thinking about it. But even before, social media has become like sort of a highlight reel of our best moments. And it's sort of subconsciously we're trying to project an image of not necessarily success, but, you know, generally speaking, as human beings, we respond more positively to certain things and more negatively to other things.
Yeah.
And to the people that are really struggling with depression or any other kind of chronic mental illness, you know, the average Facebook user is not necessarily going to consistently positively respond to that. They'll get worn out. They're like, man, this person's always depressed. They're always kind of a bummer. They're always kind of a downer. Yeah. And then that kind of fuels the cycle of, for that other person, of like, nobody cares. People aren't responding to this anymore. Maybe I was right all along about, you know, the toxic mental thoughts that I was having. So I mean, even in myself, the kinds of things that I post, like when I post a picture of myself, like it gets some decent engagement. People are like, "Yay, Brendan's face!" Yeah, it was a good picture, admittedly.
Yes, it was.
Thank you. But that gets, you know, a shit ton of engagement. And then, you know, a more cynical or political post, which is more, you know, more of how I'm feeling, generally speaking, will get 5, 10, you know, and that difference of engagement, I think, subconsciously trains everybody to curate the things that they say. And Facebook is kind of like my weird blend of like public persona, but also for families. And then my Snapchat is probably my more authentic self. I just like making people laugh, and Snapchat is just so casual and laid back anyway. And then my Instagram is my more professional portfolio kind of thing. So even within social medias, each one has their kind of curated, projected self. So, yeah.
Well, and I think the thing with me, so Twitter is more my authentic self of all things. But
it's a dumpster fire, I'm told.
Here's the thing, though. It depends on who you're following and who's following you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you notice a lot of the high profile people on there, like the blue verification,
the check marks or whatever.
Yeah, they follow only maybe 500 people. They have 20,000 followers, but they only follow 500 people. So they're not seeing all this shitstorm that we're all seeing, following massive amount of people, right? So with Twitter, you get to choose who you follow, and that's all the information you get, basically. You know, so if you follow like some news organizations, some journalists, and then some film critics, filmmakers, whatever, like it's what you want to follow and what you want to see, essentially. Whereas Facebook, like with Facebook though, like if you have like, let's say you have like over like 1,500 friends on there, right? You're automatically going to start seeing all their stuff on your timeline. So it's like a whole mixed mash of 1,500 people you probably don't give a fuck about in general.
It's admittedly true. Is Twitter less, I guess, algorithmically tainted than other ones then?
Yeah, because, I mean, what do you mean by that?
Specifically what I mean is we've got the algorithm is something that responds to the things that you click on, the things that get your attention. So when it sends you notifications, it pays attention to what kinds actually succeed and get your attention. And Facebook, and then by proxy Instagram, because Facebook bought Instagram, they start to curate your feed based on the things that you responded to in the past. So it's no longer an organic influx of information. It is more what the algorithm predicts that you might want. It's things that the algorithm has identified that you will probably respond to. And then it's about people that you engage with the most. So Facebook is extremely
algorithmized,
or however you want to talk about it. I'm unfamiliar with Twitter. I don't use it. So everybody tells me it's a dumpster fire. So they're all dumpster fires.
They're all dumpster fires. But for me, Twitter does cause me some stress quite a bit. But it's because that's like all news heavy, right? Facebook is news heavy, but Facebook also includes people sharing misinformation, right? And Twitter has that too.
Yeah.
Twitter definitely has that, and that's why I'm saying, like, if you follow just like the news publications like New York Times or NPR or Bloomberg, like all these, try to be as middle as possible kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then you're not being as tainted, right? Because and like if you follow the journalists from those websites, then like you're not being as tainted. But I mean, you could follow certain subjects if you wanted to. Like if you want to follow like movie subjects, you'll see that in your timeline. But just so you know, film Twitter is toxic.
That's literally every demographic on Twitter feels toxic as hell, which is why I've never approached it. Like I don't know how to Twitter. I don't know. I also hate the name. Can I say that?
Oh yeah, you can say that all you want. Yeah.
I don't want to make tweets. That is so. I don't want to say emasculating because I don't care about that. It's like infantilizing. I don't want to tweet about like.
Dude, just tweet about it.
No, like I want to make statements. I want to make proclamations. I don't want to make little tweets. I don't.
Yeah, no. Well, and that's what I'm saying though. Is like I only have like 200 followers on Twitter, so I'm not at loss for anybody really disagreeing with me unless they find me for like a hot take I have on a film.
Does that happen?
It's happened a couple times, but you can also change your notifications so you don't see that at all. And they also give you the option now that if they don't follow you, they can't reply to your stuff. So I think it's nice, but I also, here's the thing too. I think Twitter's been more active at trying to stop disinformation than Facebook has.
Well, yeah, and it's been pretty. Well, one thing that has kind of annoyed me about like Twitter, but also just social media in general, like Facebook and Twitter decided to ban anybody or ban dialogue about anybody wishing death on the president.
But all these journalists have gotten death threats.
Yeah, and on top of that, like even other politicians have got death threats.
Yeah.
Like AOC, for an example, was one that got massive like every day. Ilhan Omar, being a Muslim woman in Congress, you can only imagine the shit that she's got in her inbox. And then, as soon as it affects the right person, suddenly the issue is taken care of. So I was pretty frustrated with that. But Facebook doesn't give a shit at all.
No.
Like Facebook makes so much money on advertising, specifically like these targeted political ads, right? Because, Facebook is a goldmine for very specific, very narrow focused marketing that like, of course, they're not going to try that hard. It is weird to think about that we might be like, ushered into a fascist nightmare because some guy made like a website in 2009 to like stalk girls or whatever. It's like, who would have known that would have been like the recipe for world-ending disaster?
Well, and like, so the thing with Facebook that I've noticed too is people get paid off there. They get monetized their videos and stuff, and it's these influencers, and they start posting these videos, but then like once one influencer posts like that video where it's like, oh, this is a prank, it's obviously fucking set up. These other influencers try to pull off that same prank, but they're getting paid off that. Like they're getting paid to dupe us and thinking it's fucking real when it's not. And there's not even original. They're stealing ideas from other people just to stay relevant.
Well, on top of that, they're also stealing straight up videos.
Yes.
Specifically, there's a channel or a page called Fuck Jerry. And there's there's another one that I can't remember, but they just genuinely straight up unabashedly repost other people's content on Facebook. And Facebook does nothing about it. In fact, they still do it every day. So when people say fuck Jerry, I mean it a little bit differently than, fuck Jerry probably means it. But Facebook is, I am so sad that it is allowed to have such prominence in our society. And I'm like, this was more of an issue some months ago. But I mean, as far as like trying to keep a handle on hate speech and things like that, like it's really the only English spheres that get policed, because we've had a number of situations in Middle Eastern countries and South Asian countries where there's been vicious racism. And people are posting misinformation that directly results in loss of life as people overreact to it. And it's just been allowed to fester because they didn't have any people that spoke that language managing the Facebook notification or the reporting team. So I am massively disappointed in Facebook. I wish they would do more. I don't think they care. And it's all about the Benjamins, baby. So
have you seen The Social Dilemma? Have you seen that, or were you guys?
I plan to. I don't expect it to tell me too much that I don't already know. I think it'll explore more of the technical specificities of what's happening. But for the most part, I'm pretty aware of how damaging social media is in a broad societal sense, and how harmful it is on a personal, individual level as well.
So as an artisan, do you think we actually need social media to stay relevant, or do you think it just depends on our art?
Yes and no.
Because for me, I think it's more of like a shortcut. Like it offers that opportunity that somebody will see your work, and that increases the chance of that, but it's not going to be guaranteed, right? And it's the fact that these people think they're guaranteed, guaranteed to be viewed, or guaranteed that they're. And then here's another thing too: is like Facebook and just Twitter, social media as a whole, has enabled this thing where we think that our opinions matter. You know, here's the thing though. In reality, dude, if we didn't have Facebook or any of that, like our opinions wouldn't fucking matter. We just go out there and vote, essentially. You know, that's how we show our stuff. But now everybody thinks they have a voice and that it fucking matters. And if it doesn't, then you're blocked.
Like it's such a weird like dynamic, because like obviously I think everybody deserves a voice, but like there's a great Asimov quote that is, your ignorance is not as, or rather, your knowledge is not as valuable as my ignorance, or something like that. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about there, where we have the situation where everybody's got this platform to say whatever goddamn miserable thought comes to their brain. And it's not necessarily productive, but it's out there and people feel validated in saying that. And then we have also got this component of, you know, we've got like 3 or 4 major companies that have kind of like bought up the internet. You've got Google, Facebook, we'll throw TikTok in there, and Instagram's a component of Facebook, and Twitter, we'll say. Whereas back in the golden age of the internet, we didn't have internet monoliths. Yeah, YouTube wasn't owned by Google. Well, but we also had like thousands of niche forums. Like if you wanted to learn how to work on your cars, there, you know, like you'd have specific automotive forums. If you like, you know, niche, like nerdy hobbies, like Warhammer 40,000 or something, like there were websites that you'd go to, like forum style. You'd make accounts, you'd post, you know, you'd have different boards for different discussions. And there wasn't this corporatization. RuneScape, yeah, which is, by the way, turned into a nasty corporation. Like they basically have, like, it's so sad how our childhood giants have become villains. But they are basically, they realized, like many video game developers realize, that they can make a shitload of money by mercilessly exploiting people who have gambling addictions. And basically engineering gambling situations where they can buy with real money these tokens that they gamble with to get prizes and stuff. And RuneScape has basically done the exact same thing. In any case, you know, the golden age of the internet started to go away when the dialogue, the social sphere began to be consumed by these kind of internet monoliths. Because this wasn't, you know, people had Facebook and stuff, people had MySpace and stuff, but they were not the nexus through which the internet was explored, which is what they've become now. Yeah. So do I think social media is like necessary for artists? Yes and no. I think it's a useful tool, but even Instagram itself, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, really was a useful tool for social or for photographers, because if their shit went viral, if they got a really, you know, amazing like photo series that an influencer picked up, you know, they could get a lot of attention that way. But Instagram, like many other companies, realized that they could monetize the algorithm. So you'd have to pay for promotions. You could pay for a boost in your profile. You could pay for your images, your posts being sponsored and appearing in people's feeds more. So now it's very artificial and restrained that way, and it's actually much more difficult and more expensive to make it on social media, and in a way that you are now kind of limiting yourself by putting your effort there. So, you know, on one hand, social media kind of gets in your way, but two, because like I mentioned, now that, you know, 4 or 5 digital giants have kind of consumed the internet, there's not a lot of other places to go. I kind of want to turn my website into a portfolio that I will link. So it's not necessarily Instagram, even though I'll probably run an Instagram alongside it. I don't know what the next face of the internet will look like, but I do hope that there is some kind of step away from just handing everything to these 4 or 5 giants and just hoping that they will respect human life, and
They don't.
dignity. They obviously they don't, but as social discontent grows and foments, something will be shaking up and something will emerge. And I hope whatever emerges is something that is what the internet used to be, which is accessible and free, basically free from corporate control. So
I remember when YouTube was fun. It's still
I
fun.
do.
There's still some golden stuff on there, but
YouTube is its own thing. Like, obviously, YouTube was awesome back when it was just,
Shit
back
posting.
when YouTube was running. Yeah, well, because the way the YouTube recommends worked, like you could stumble on across all kinds of things, all different things, all random things. And now, like Facebook, it's curated. It's based on the things that you interact with, and it's no longer organic. But it's like YouTube is also becoming very meta. A lot of popular YouTube content is about YouTube. It's about YouTubers, and it's less about people like creating art and creating just unique video experiences. Like how many of the top YouTubers, besides the Jake Pauls and the Logan Pauls of the world, are about homegrown content? Like H3 Productions. I typically enjoyed his stuff, but almost all of his stuff was just critiquing other YouTubers. There's a whole drama community thing, a Keemstar, like all that shit.
Oh, you've
so
been paying
much of
attention
it
to that?
Yeah, I mean, I only because I get exposed to it, right? Because the algorithm's like, what you would like? YouTubers talking shit on each other. So, it's sort of sad. YouTube kind of sucks now. Like the content creators on it are valuable and I love them, but the platform doesn't have their back at all. It's sad.
Dude, the recommendations I have is either Metallica, or it's Jack Black and TV, or it's like people feeding spiders.
Well, that's cool.
Or movie stuff, like talk about reverse shots and stuff. But and then there's a bunch of fucking news. But yeah.
Well, that was another thing that kind of really upset me, was at least probably specifically 4 years ago, there's been a number of YouTubers, very successful YouTubers, that covered news items, and people liked them because they weren't corporate news. And then Google/YouTube decided to kind of retroactively install mainstream TV broadcast news onto YouTube. And your YouTube feed, I bet you, will be CBS and MSNBC, Fox News, ABC, and then possibly BBC. Whereas before, it might have been YouTubers delivering that news to you. It might have been, the grassroots community that, exploring the news on their own personal channels. And now, they've decided to instead transplant old media onto new media and just make YouTube even more shitty and corporate. Like, it's so sad to see it happening, but I don't know how to defeat that. If it's all about the Benjamins, us grassroots content creators really don't have too many, tools to play against them.
No, so that's my questions. Like, do we need social media then, or can we go old school still?
Well, to be successful these days, like, I haven't made it yet. Caveat. So take all what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But
Me too.
I think we have to balance trying to live the life that we want and to, work for the career we want, how we want to, but we also have to balance it with living in a society. As somebody, as like a leftist, in one of the like right-wing talking points I get exposed to a lot is like, well, if you hate America, why do you live here? And it's like, well, it's not that simple. I can't just fucking like leave.
Because no other country will accept us.
Well, now, because we're all toxic, COVID, like radioactive. Oh God,
dude, my uncle lives in New Zealand, and he actually tells them that he's from Canada.
That is so sad. But you got to do what you got to do to make friends, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm gonna own it if I ever do travel abroad, but I think people will pretty quickly figure it out that I'm not the stereotype. But in any case, yeah, it's yeah, I don't know how to get out of this sort of corporate stranglehold on how artists are allowed to express themselves. So on one hand, we have to participate in the society that we have as best as we can, but
right.
I think at the same time, attempting to forge a new path that hopefully can put some distance between what we live now and what we want in the future. So
yeah,
yeah.
So after watching The Social Dilemma, I was already having like a hate relationship with Facebook, right? Just because it was negative
I
stuff.
think we all do. I hear that so often.
Well, yeah, and it got Social Dilemma just made me, it seriously made me want to delete it. But then if I deleted it, I wouldn't have some of the chat groups on Facebook,
Yep.
And also my podcast page on Facebook is linked to my main profile. So like I have to have the main profile to even access that. They rope you in to staying.
And then there's no way out, right?
There's no way out. Yeah. And so, but if I wasn't a creative, then I have to ask this question, like, do you have to have social media if you're not a creative? Could you still stay off the grid and still have a social life? And
it's complicated because, that also kind of touches on the activism part as well. Like one of the reasons I keep Facebook is, when people post events, it's like, okay, something is happening and I need to be aware of that. But at the same time, everybody I talk to about Facebook is like, oh, I hate it. And meanwhile, we're all using it all day long. So it is an abusive relationship, and I refuse to accept that it is the only way. I fully sympathize with, especially your situation where your podcast page is a Facebook page. But I have to, just for my own sanity, I have to believe that there is some way to break out of this, or at least there is a way to manage social media in a way that mitigates the worst of it and still facilitates your business growth. Like it's so weird that we have to even live in a world where this is even like a feasible business model, but there are certainly programs that will automate posts for you, and make you can schedule posts essentially. Things like that, which, when I get to that point, I'll probably be using, because at that point, it's no longer a media feed per se. It's no longer me kind of just scrolling through, looking at my notifications, seeing what my friends are doing. And I'm more just kind of living my regular life, and then kind of occasionally glancing into that window to be informed. And hopefully that's something that we can all start doing, is trying to at least limit the influence that it has on our just a daily 24-hour allotment of time. But unfortunately I don't have the answer yet for what the solution to this problem looks like. I wish I did, but I don't know. I don't know what Internet 2 will look like. Hopefully it'll be less shitty.
Yeah, you would hope, right? And the documentaries, only explanation is just to delete it.
Which is
that mindset is just like, fuck, like, is that really the only way, And
it's hard.
In hindsight, it feels, well, after watching the documentary, man, I mean, like, I know some people didn't like it because a lot of their business model is based off of Facebook, and that's how they've got their reach. But I also think, especially with YouTube, it's hard to be YouTube famous now if you weren't YouTube famous 10 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We've missed that window. Same with Instagram, like you were talking about. And the same thing with Facebook, like I feel like these windows are closed, and it's just like we're stagnant and like purgatory.
Truth told, that was one reason why I got TikTok. The other reason I got it was briefly illegal, and it was fucking cool. It was the coolest thing to do. But no, it is bizarre, because it's like we grew up with these things, and yet we've also we missed our window to make fullest use of them. So it is a strange line to walk, and I try to temper myself and not beat myself up too much that these windows have closed, or at least are less open than they were before. But also to remember that I don't want to put too much of my, I don't want to say lack of success, because I certainly feel like I'm doing really well for myself right now.
Dude, you're
but
doing fucking awesome.
thank you. I feel that way as well. Like I've got a long way to go, but for the things that I am doing, I feel very validated.
You're still
my
moving
ability.
forward, and that's all it fucking matters.
Yes, and I have to remind myself that like the speed that I'm going at is okay, and also I am more or less in control of how much energy I put into it. I don't want
Right.
to say like I'm in control of my own destiny, because that's kind of that toxic individual thing I was mentioning earlier, where so much of the world will determine how far I actually go, right? And right now we're talking about one of them. Like we missed the golden age of YouTube and social media to really have a better shot of getting out there. And that is a material reality we have to live with now. That is something that we have to fight against. That is something that we are resisting on our paths to creative success here. So, and you can't bootstrap yourself, out of that. Like the odds are against us in that specific regard, and we have to be kind to ourselves.
But I kind of want to touch on this too, because it relates to big blockbusters and movie theater chains, right? Like as you know, I think Regal just shut down.
Yeah,
due to COVID. But and like all these big blockbusters are still, like Dune just got announced. It's being pushed back to 2021 in October. Sad face.
Yes. Also, yeah. Like I had so little to look forward to already, and it's like
that's a nail in the coffin. Yep,
dude. Fucking Cyberpunk 2077.
The video game 2077. Yeah. Is it 77? I'm gonna look that up.
Thank you. That's supposed to be released next month, but I'm not holding my breath anymore. Everything cool is going to happen next year. God help us all.
Yeah, 2077. Dude, that game looks punk as fuck. But
I mean, it's right in the
name. But these big blockbusters and stuff, because they rely so much with the big money, right? They rely so much on the theatrical experience. I feel like independent films now have their window again, where we are still going to be saving the industry. Not we. Well, I mean, just independent films, like grassroots people. They're going to be saving the industry still by going to VOD, by giving money to studios still, and being able to bring in some sort of money for the big ones.
Not to make it like political again, but I mean, Bernie Sanders kind of proved that you don't need big money to make serious influence. Like every dollar that he raised was just from individuals contributing to it.
And that's how Sundance was when it first started.
Yeah. And, then it got co-opted by big money, and then Slamdance, arose to counteract it. So it's very cyclical that way. But absolutely, I firmly believe that the grassroots approach is something that can seriously shake up how the industry moves and operates.
Yeah.
The people will find a way, and I hope it continues. Like any less corporate control over media will just benefit everybody, I think.
Yeah, well, and I find, especially now with the dire times, right? I'm excited to see what kind of comes out from this period. Like, have people been writing?
It will be very interesting. Very interesting.
And kind of like with that approach of like, we don't have money from big studios, so we have more freedom, more control over our projects, right? Like how raw is the message is actually going to be, and like how relatable is it going to be?
I'd almost argue it's our civic duty to be as authentic and as raw as possible.
Fuck yes,
because
dude.
The people that do have money will not be telling an accurate recollection, right?
Exactly. And like you were saying that you want to include masks in your script. I'll be, why not, dude? By the time this all lifts up and you have the script ready to film, fucking go out there and make it, and guess what? It's still relevant as it is when you wrote it.
It'll be like a weird thing to point to in the past. It's like, oh yeah, that was the Rona year.
the Rona era.
Yeah, at this point, it's like the Rona decade. Fuck. Fuck. So what can we do?
But I do think the grassroots, though, will still be there always. And it's always been there throughout history. There's always been that kind of mentality that we don't need the money, the big money. We could still, in our case, create, or we could still move people with activism. Like there's still ways to move forward, essentially.
And again, I don't know exactly what the right way forward looks like.
Right.
But definitely, kind of on the subject of like, you were asking me about, can we make it with or without social media? And this is kind of what I was talking about. Like, if there is a way to capture that grassroots energy and enthusiasm for independence, for just wild and free creative abandon, then I think there is hope for real change. If there's some vehicle or mechanism that can facilitate grassroots enthusiasm, then I think that will be the next major thing that big money will immediately try to co-opt or copy. So always err on the side of the feet of the people. That's what I would say.
Hell yeah, dude. Excited. I'm excited to see I'm excited to see what you do. Like, seriously, I really liked the latest edition that you sent me a couple months ago. I don't know if you've fixed it up since, but
no, I haven't touched it. Like usual.
Was that that's the first act we're talking about, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Dude, yes.
Yeah, you liked it. Sweet.
I did. Yes. And I already told you that if you need help making it, like,
bro. I've got I mean, pretty much everybody that we went to screenwriting with will be there involved in some way. So I just have to like finish it. And I also I'm waiting for it to feel right to work on, thank God I didn't finish it, because if it made it into Slamdance and then, this year happened as it did, like, ooh boy, I would be massively sad.
Like, I get people have to make money and still work, if you're in the industry, but it feels so risky to still even try to attempt making a movie if you haven't even started it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I was saying, like, when it feels right, because I want to get the script down as soon as I can. So I will be ready when there is an opportunity. But like, while there's so much risk involved, it's like, everybody has some element of agency and they can choose to work on the film or not. But like you were saying, if, I don't want people to work on this film because they feel financially required to do so. Because at that point, it's coercion, like, hey, I've got a paid gig, will you come work for it? And if their situation is like, if I don't, my rent moratorium is expiring and I need money, then I'm going to take this. I would never forgive myself if somebody got sick and, God forbid, died working on my project. So I feel like, and of course we live in Utah, where half the population is like, masks are a compromise on my personal liberty. I ain't going to wear one. So we're going to have Utah like coronavirus hotspot for forever. But until it reaches a point that I feel like it's manageable, I probably won't be putting it to production quite yet. I'll do as much pre-production as I possibly can. And then we'll see what happens. But if it reaches a point where I can competently execute this script with a very limited crew and actually keep it like sanitized and safe, because I know at least 2 people that are certified by the, I don't know by who. I think it might be SAG, I'm not sure, but basically make it, safe. And I might try that route if it's like year 5 of this fucking bullshit and I'm just like, all right. Gotta do something.
Yeah. Kind of like, I know when the pandemic first hit, I kind of thought, it's kind of a time to reflect and kind of to focus in on our own skill set. So you have all the time in the world to finish the script right now, like there's no rush. There's no,
it's true.
You know where the finish line is.
Mm-hmm. It's true. But at the same time, the reason for that pause, was like, for a nation anyway, a very traumatizing event, like, true, we had time to sit down and write, but the reality is that we didn't choose this time to write. It was the economy was dying. It was, like they were defibrillating it back to life by injecting trillions of dollars into the economy to keep it like going. And people are, sorry, Dad, I'm on live TV right now. You're going to have to come back later. Get out of here. If that was him texting me just now. Let's see. What did my dad try to get from me? I bet it was something dumb.
It's like my mom tried to call me during this too.
Hell yeah. living at home, speaking of like traumatizing events, I'm like, obviously I'm
Where's
living
this
at
going?
home because no, I was just going to say like, I'm very privileged in that I have like a home to retreat to because I was living with my girlfriend. And when we broke up, I came back here and then, was just going to hang out here for a couple months and then pick up the business. And then when I had enough, invest in an apartment or house or something. And then, spent the first 2 months of this year traveling, being an activist. So like, why would I put money on a rent on like an apartment I'm not even inside of? And then the coronavirus, and like, that's why I came home. It essentially ended that prematurely. So that's another creative like block that needs to be addressed too. I don't know. It's the situation to write is like, it's true. We have time and we have, in my case, I have a space that I can write in. But the reality is the only reason I have that is because the world is on fire, which turns out is not super conducive to writing like really well, in my personal opinion.
No, it's hard because you have to shut off your mind and focus on writing and not letting, outside stuff. But it's hard to do that when you're surrounded by outside stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's damn near impossible. And I remember like having that exact thought. It was like, I'm here by myself, isolating. Let's write. And then like the only thing I think about was like, oh man, that economy is fucked, isn't it? Like, oh man, like people are fucking dying right now. Like, oh my God, like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
And then, so it was like the last thing I was thinking about was writing. And also at that time, like I said, that was when I was on the Bernie campaign. Like, obviously, the reason I was home isolating was because I had to stop campaigning because they suspended all the operations. So, I wasn't thinking about writing. I was thinking about like, oh, are we really going to have Joe Biden against Trump? Like that's what was in my mind. The last thing I wanted to do was like write.
Yeah.
I just was so, caught up with that I couldn't. So I hope everybody is being as productive as they possibly can during these times. But I would also caution everybody to give yourselves a break. 2020, obviously it's a meme. Everybody's having enough of 2020.
And
but remember to be kind be kind to yourself as well.
We deserve it.
We deserve it. And like Paul Larson, tried to teach us like creativity is not something that you can force. It's something that needs to be eased and like negotiated with for it to work for you. And if your mentality is I'm alone at home and I need to work, so work for me, nothing's going to happen anyway. So if you want to be more productive and you want to feel a little better about yourself, just give yourself a break. And when you feel prepared to write, you should do it. And try not to be too harsh on yourself if that creative fire is a little dimmed right now, because I think it is for most people.
Oh, for sure. I admire anybody who's still going out there like making stuff.
Yeah, for like, real. It's so
stuff.
Fucking hard. Like all my Instagram stuff is like this weird, like dark, cynical tone, and it's like the only thing that like keeps me sane is expressing it somehow.
I thought about like doing some vlogs or whatever, just because there's downtime. I'm like, it'd be kind of fun to utilize editing, besides from doing it with the podcast, but it'd be kind of fun to edit with Premiere still. Mm-hmm. And then I set it all up. And then I just sit there and I'm like, okay, how can I be funny? And then I'll like have like the worst sense of humor. Like I think the last time I tried to do it was like when the Semen Demon girl was.
Oh my Jesus!
Yeah, because the idea was like to do like one of the split filming, where I'm talking to myself essentially, but like writing out the dialogue for that, I was just I can't do it. Like it just pisses me off. Mm-hmm. I have to even like mention that.
It sucks. Yeah, it sucks. And it's like, I don't know the right way out of that. The only thing I can think to say is like, just do it when it suits you and do it for you as well. So.
And that's the biggest reminder is, going back to social media is like, we try to do it to get ourselves out there, which in a sense is not being true to yourself. Mm-hmm. Because like we're like you said, it validates us almost. It's that trick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think once you separate yourself from that, and like you actually put all your heart into it, like all your passion into it, then like doesn't matter how many views it gets, like it's out there, like you're proud of it in the end.
Absolutely.
But
I'd agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Sweet. Um, let's start wrapping this up just a little bit.
Sounds good to me.
I'm going to ask you just two questions.
Yes, sir.
How do you hope you can inspire others? I think this is kind of a nice one since you are into activism and also an artist. So it kind of like there's so many different ways you can do it, you know?
Yeah. And I guess like inspire to what? I guess that could be anything. How do I hope to inspire people?
Yeah.
If anything, I hope that I can inspire people to pursue a life that validates their own humanity. And to explain what I mean by that, I feel like we are very much defined by the things that we spend our time with, the things that we are consumed by, the things that we consume, the people around us. And there's all these influences that kind of get in the way of who you are and who you want to be. And I mean, just kind of running off exactly what we were just talking about a moment ago. Living an authentic life is one I think that can only come from just living your own like personal truth.
Yeah.
So if I can inspire anybody to be anything, I hope that I can tease out of them who they actually are and to push them onto a path of exploring that person as deeply as possible for as long as possible. Because I mean, those are the kinds of people that I enjoy talking to the most. That's the kind of person I hope to be. And those are the people that I find are generally the most passionate and the most compassionate as well. So if anything, that's what I hope for.
I love that. That's very heartwarming.
Thanks, man.
And what's one piece of advice that has stuck to you throughout the years, and how do you apply it?
Christ. Okay. I wish I'd thought about. I actually looked at the questions you sent me, and
this is a part of the stuff I sent you, sir.
Damn. You did, and I had an answer, and then I didn't have my prep time vanished because I got that other phone call. The piece of advice that has kept me going. I think. There's a couple. Recently, it's been to just try and be as present as possible, and it's kind of dips its toes into Buddhist philosophy a little bit. But I think true happiness comes from being completely present. And that does not necessarily mean, don't be mindful of the future and don't forget what happened in the past. But to be truly present, I think is what real joy is, because when you're laughing, is a very like handy example. It's because you're immediately responding to something happening to you, or you're remembering something that happened before and it's making you laugh again. That I think that's where real peace lies. And when people talk about meditation and clearing your mind and all of that, I think I'm starting to figure out what they're actually talking about. Because as soon as you're obsessing about the uncertain future, or things that happened in the past, and wishing you could change them, there's almost an arrogance in that, like an arrogance in assuming that the universe, or it is an arrogance that your life was supposed to have unfolded differently somehow, as if the universe erred or you erred, and the timeline that you're living now is not the one that you need to be living in. I think that's so much pressure that you put on yourself that you don't need to. It's important to learn from the past, but to try and obsess over it and let it poison your present moment is really toxic. And then looking forward as like an activist, it's damn near impossible sometimes to turn out the uncertain future from my daily life. But if I make time to just remind myself of what it feels like to be present, laughing with a friend, or just really appreciating where I am at that moment, if I'm on a walk or something, or if I can sit down and just remind myself what the concrete feels like under my fingertips, just super basic, fundamental human experiences. It helps. Obviously, it won't put bread on the table and it won't put money in the bank, but those little moments of crisis, just try to remember that you are a soul living a human experience and not the other way around. And the only way to do that is to be present, I think.
No, I seriously, like, that's Great.
Well, thank you.
Well, no, because I was thinking, you saying all that, my stepmom bought me a little, what do you want to call it? One of the things you put around your rearview mirror to just dangles there, right?
Mhm.
And it says "Let go and trust the universe." And it has like all the planets like
Mhm.
on it. And I have that in my car just because it's a nice reminder. Because when you're driving, it's nice to look at that and remind yourself to like let go and trust the universe and know that everything falls into place because you are where you need to be, essentially.
Mhm.
That I don't think there's such thing as like mistakes necessarily, because as long as you learn, is that really a mistake? If you're not learning the process, then maybe those like what you said, the crisis, of like, why am I here? But then going back to that, like the fundamentals of touching the ground or recognizing how much you've actually accomplished, like then that you are where you need to be
Mhm.
24/7,
Yeah, absolutely. And you are exactly where you need to be because you are where you are. Like
Yeah.
it's the most like
Yeah.
nonsense wisdom in the world, but like genuinely, like
It hits, man.
yeah, like what are we? But accidentally conscious beings on like a rocky ball whirling through space. Like it is so arrogant to think we're supposed to be doing anything. Like it's amazing I can speak to you at all on this blisteringly complex laptop and inscrutable internet connection. Like this is a miraculous experience that we're having that maybe we have taken for granted in many ways, but just it's amazing that we even get to participate in this experience at all. And obviously, the material conditions of our experience could be vastly improved. I mean, that's why I'm so politically active. But
Yeah.
but literally being alive, I think, is something that can be appreciated only actively in the moment. Like the interaction that we're having right now, and hopefully, regular practice of being mindful and being present can help stave off the big sad, the big void that many of us are experiencing.
Well, and I think, like you said, that all of us are experiencing it. Like we're all in it together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's some of us have got hit harder than others for sure. But granted, we're all experiencing some sort of loss of identity. Like we all
Absolutely.
want. It goes back to you saying, we have this like self identity that we have to be something great, and this is kind of a moment to be like, well, we're all in this together. We're all
Yeah, and I love that too. Like there's a certain romantic ideal for the self-made man that succeeded against all the odds, but like I wonder how miserable that must have been.
fucking
If
miserable,
I
man.
could choose between that path and the path where I got to the ideal place of happiness and success in my life because other people helped me get there, I'll take that one every time.
Yeah.
Think of all the wonderful lifelong connections you make when you really open up and allow yourself to rely on other people.
Yeah.
It's a wonderfully intoxicating feeling. It never fails to make me present, to make it relevant.
Amen, dude. After all this is over, we need to go to a bar. And have a good old drink.
I think we're more likely to crack open a cold one over a barrel fire, in the nuclear winter of 2033. But we'll see.
We'll make sure it's not radioactive.
Fuck yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay, sir, where can people find you? I know we were kind of talking the negative stuff on social media, but where can people find you?
Let me get my business card out again. So it's going to be backwards, I bet, right?
No, it's actually Lantern Light Media, photo, video, film.
That's right. And here's the backside. At Lantern Light Media.
At Lantern
on
Light
those
Media.
Evil social media websites that we were lambasting earlier. Yeah, at Lantern Light Media, underscores between the words. Yeah, you can also find my website at lanternlight.media as well. And feel free to reach out and say hello or not. Whatever, it's fine. We're all living a life. I respect your autonomy.
Oh man, you're so humble.
I am in my parents' basement. I gotta keep it real.
All right, well, dude, thank you for coming on.
Of course, thank you for having me.
We'll talk shortly.
All right, take care of yourself, man.